When Christopher Columbus set foot in the New World, an age of discovery opened, but it also planted the seeds of an unprecedented nightmare. The hero who discovered America was about to be exposed. What horrifying truth was hidden behind the glory of this celebrated historical figure? Christopher Columbus was born in Genoa, Italy, but moved to Portugal in 1476, where he joined many great voyages. In the 15th century, European trade was booming, and the need for new markets spurred the search for new routes to the east. Columbus proposed a voyage west across the Atlantic to reach Asia. After many rejections, he turned to the Spanish crown. Finally, Queen Isabella I agreed to finance this historic journey. On the morning of the 3rd of August 1492, Christopher Columbus led 3 ships, the Santa Maria, Pinta, and Nina, with a crew of 88 men from the port of Palos. They utilized the easterly winds to head south to the Canary Islands. After resupplying, the fleet turned west on September 6th. Thanks to favorable conditions, they quickly sailed through unmapped waters. In the first 10 days, the expedition covered over 1,100 miles. But by September 19th, anxiety set in as they repeatedly failed to find the seabed. On October 7th, migrating birds appeared a promising sign. Columbus decided to follow their flight path. Even so, doubt grew. The captains agreed. If they didn't see land in 3 more days, they would turn back. However, natural signals, like fresh tree branches floating on the water, showed land was near. Around 2 a.m. on October 12th, a sailor on the Pinta spotted a white streak on the horizon. Land had truly appeared. By noon, his crew officially became the first Spaniards to set foot on the new continent. Christopher Columbus named the island San Salvador. He believed he was the first to discover it, as the inhabitants were nearly naked, approached timidly, and were certainly not Chinese or Indian. We know very little about the indigenous peoples of the Caribbean at that time. First, they had no writing system. Second, their oral traditions were completely destroyed by the Spanish colonists. Therefore, all information about them comes from the first Europeans. This reliance on indirect sources severely distorts our view of their culture. One of the most lasting confusions is Columbus calling the people Indians. He believed he had reached the East Indies. This misnomer stuck for centuries, lumping hundreds of different peoples under one inaccurate name. At first, Columbus noted the friendliness and generosity of the Taino people on San Salvador. But behind this observation, a cold calculation was forming. In his diary, Columbus noted the natives would make ideal servants due to their docile nature, quick minds, and lack of any clear religion. He even wrote that he would take 6 of them back to Europe so they could learn to speak. After being told of other islands, Columbus set sail, taking the 6 captured Taino as guides. They explored new lands, including Cuba. A team sent inland found no trace of China or Japan, but they did report back a strange custom: residents burning dried leaves and inhaling the smoke. This was Europe's first encounter with tobacco. Meanwhile, rumors of gold intensified. Natives told Columbus of a place called Bohio, where one could pick up this sparkling metal. Mesmerized, Captain Martin Pinzon of the Pinta quietly deserted the fleet to hunt for this treasure himself. Columbus continued on, arriving at a lush island he named Hispaniola, Little Spain. Here too the Taino welcomed him. Columbus noted the chief wore splendid gold jewelry and emphasized the people here are shy, easy to command, and can be made to work as desired. His mindset had clearly shifted from explorer to conqueror. On Christmas night, the exhausted crew ran the flagship Santa Maria aground on a coral reef. With the help of the local chief, Guacanagari, they saved the cargo. But Columbus now only had the small Nina, not enough to carry everyone home. This gave him the perfect excuse to establish a permanent colony. He ordered the wood from the wrecked Santa Maria be used to build a small fort, La Navidad. 39 men were left behind. Columbus had begun to treat the natives as subjects to be exploited. On the 4th of January 1493, he began his return journey. He soon met the Pinta. The news Pinzon brought that he had found large amounts of gold was enough for Columbus to forgive the desertion. After a brief skirmish with the Taino, Columbus hastily set sail for Spain, taking native prisoners as living proof. The return journey was harsh, plagued by storms. Columbus arrived in Palos on March 15th after 224 days. He learned Martin Pinzon had returned first but was already dead, taking the full truth of the voyage to his grave. Around April 20th, Columbus entered the royal court with his strange entourage, exotic items, and gold. He was received as a hero. He was granted the title Admiral of the Ocean Sea and expected to quickly exploit the new treasure. However, from an investor's point of view, the voyage was a bitter failure. The promise of the rich East was an illusion. Columbus brought back only a few tropical islands, strange plants, and peaceful natives. He also hid the fact that he had lost his flagship, the Santa Maria. Still, Columbus skillfully wrote letters in 1493 to secure funding for a second trip. The Crown approved, and this time the scale was massive. 17 ships and 1,200 men, including priests and soldiers. The goal was clear: establish an official colony. In September 1493, the fleet departed. When they returned to La Navidad, the fort, Columbus found only ruins. All 39 soldiers had been killed in a conflict with the Taino over gold and local women. He built a new settlement, La Isabela, and his true face began to show. His voyage was marked by clashes. He accused some Carib tribes of cannibalism, likely an excuse to justify slaughter. To prove he was near Asia, he forced his entire crew to swear that Cuba was the mainland. The punishment for breaking this oath was having their tongue cut out. Back at La Isabela, the colony was collapsing. His brother Diego couldn't handle the crisis. The settlers, frustrated by the tyranny, sent secret letters of complaint to Spain. Disappointed by the lack of gold, Columbus proposed a more horrifying plan. Turn the native people into a commodity. About 1,500 Taino were captured. 500 were shipped to Spain, but most died on the journey. The Crown, seeing this as both immoral and unprofitable, ended the native slave trade. The fate of those left behind was no better. Unable to meet the impossible gold quotas and facing penalties of amputation or execution, the Taino fled to the mountains, only to be hunted down like animals. According to the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation, in 1492, Hispaniola had an estimated 250,000 indigenous people. By 1517, only 14,000 remained. Some scholars argue the arrival of Europeans and Africans may have wiped out up to 90% of the population, a catastrophe worse than the Black Death. The first cause was disease. Europeans brought lethal germs like measles and smallpox, which the native population had no immunity against. Entire communities were wiped out. The second cause was more toxic: politics. From day one, the Spanish policy was to turn the natives into forced labor, with Columbus himself leading the capture and transport of human beings. In March 1496, Columbus returned to Spain. The reception was no longer celebratory. The Spanish crown's faith was wavering. Still, the king reluctantly approved a third voyage in May 1498, mainly fearing other powers would seize the land. This was perhaps his most important journey. He became the first European to set foot on the continent of South America. On the 1st of August 1498, he landed on the coast of Venezuela. He encountered the vast mouth of the Orinoco River, a body of fresh water so massive He believed only a great continent could create it. He wrote to the king, "Your Highness will possess immense dominions, a completely different world." Unfortunately, Columbus's health was in serious decline due to dysentery. Experts believe this impacted his mental state. He began to slip into delusions, speculating the new land held mythical treasures, even the actual Garden of Eden. Such wild ideas made the Spanish court even more skeptical. When Columbus returned to La Isabela, the colony was in open rebellion against his family. Unable to control it, he begged Spain for help. This was the excuse the court needed. A royal representative, Francisco de Bobadilla, was sent to investigate. Soon after, Columbus was arrested for hiding assets and conspiring to create a private kingdom. The result for Columbus? Chains. And the humiliation of being transported back to Spain. All his power in the New World was revoked. In May 1502, he was allowed one final fourth voyage, on the strict condition he never returned to Hispaniola. He reached the Isthmus of Panama, only 20 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean. But the trip was a disaster of disease, despair, and conflict. In November 1504, Columbus returned to Spain, broken. His greatest patron, Queen Isabella, had died. In his desperation, he claimed his every step was guided by the Almighty. He boasted of finding over 1,700 islands. The Spanish court responded with absolute silence. While Columbus's final years were not in poverty, as is often claimed, they were filled with disappointment and loneliness. Scholars today view him with great ambivalence for two key reasons. 1. The profound and devastating consequences his arrival had on the native peoples of the Americas, a catastrophe of culture and humanity. 2. Yet, in terms of navigation, he was the first European of the 15th century to establish systematic, lasting contact with the continent across the Atlantic. On the 20th of May 1506, Columbus died quietly in Valladolid, ending the life of one of the most controversial and world-changing figures in history. Thank you for watching this story. If you found this video valuable, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us create more content like this. We look forward to seeing you in the next video.